Hey everybody, Jacob's Painting here with a new tutorial. Today I'm going to show you a really easy way of painting red on your models. I've got this awesome ghost keel. I'm going to be doing some Farsight Enclave colors on it. I've got some custom Farsight bits as well as a custom weapon so that you can have Farsight close combat weapon on that gun there with the big old sword. Got it primed black. The first thing we're going to do is do a light pre-shade with this red-brown primer. This is just to sort of dust the surface of the model and leave all of our details and panel lines and all those really cool surface details of this Tau battlesuit shaded. Notice how I'm not doing an opaque base coat. I have the airbrush about 5-6 inches standoff from the ghost keel. Got it thinned out with some flow improver, just very lightly spraying on the ghost keel so as to get those nice flat surfaces pre-shaded. The next thing we're going to do is grab some bold titanium white. I'm going to put that in the airbrush with some flow improver as well, and we're going to do a second pre-shade and pop out a lot of the details and also highlight a lot of the tops of our armor surfaces, things of that nature. This guy's pretty big, so I'm trying to cover the biggest areas of detail, get those shoulder pads and the arms and legs and like the top of his big booster rack, things like that popped out with our pre-shade. Making sure to only spray at a high angle on the model. Just make sure you don't overdo it and blow it out with a really big spurt of white from the airbrush. You want this to be nice and smooth and light. You can always add more, so I like to do a pre-shade on an area just to see what it looks like and then build up to a much more vibrant white by adding more to it, so that way I don't run the risk of spraying too much, because if you spray too much that can kind of blow it out, and even though we're going to put colors over this to create our reds, don't want to have too much of that pre-shade built up in any one spot. Next I'm going to grab this red from Ammo by MIG. Really liking these Ammo by MIG paints for pre-shade tech because they're really thin airbrush ready paints. And then I'm going to grab the Army Painter airbrush medium. It's a airbrush thinner with a little bit of flow improver added to it. It's a nice little mix, especially for these paints that we're using for this. And again, I've got the airbrush kind of off from the model about 5-6 inches, so I have a nice thin spray pattern, and I'm going to lightly spray over the whole model. I'm going to catch the undersides, I'm going to catch the tops. Basically what we're doing is we're going to apply very thin color filters using this paint over top of our pre-shade, and our pre-shade is going to do all the work for us. It's going to show our shadows, going to show our highlights, and all we got to do is just spray a thin coat over top of it. Now as I'm doing this, you'll probably notice that on some of the areas where our pre-shade is brightest, where a lot of that white is still showing through, it is a little pink looking. Get sort of that pink magenta type color. That's okay, we're gonna fix that. But typically when you're using really thin red paint over white, you're gonna get a little bit of that magenta look. Now if that's what you want for your armor, then you can just stop here, it works fine. But we're trying to get that really nice sort of primary red that Farsight is known for. Really vibrant primary red, so we don't want it to be too pink. That's why we're going to do a couple of more steps to get it to where we want it to be. Now to get rid of that kind of pinkness that we have on some of the model, I'm going to do the exact same thing with this orange. I'm going to thin it out with the airbrush medium. You can use airbrush thinner too if you can't find this stuff. Works just as good. And again, I'm going to apply a very thin orange color filter over most of the model. With this one, I'm mostly trying to focus on the top areas of the model so that we're hitting those kind of pink areas where the pre-shade is showing through, hitting that with some of that orange. That's going to take away that pink showing through color that we have from the first step. And it is going to look pretty orange, but that's okay because we have one more step we're going to do to make sure that we have a nice vibrant red instead of a vibrant orange, because Farsight is not orange, they are red. Once that's done, we're going to go back to our red. So really you only need the two colors. You just need red and orange. And I'm going to thin that out, and then again I'm going to apply a very thin red color filter over top of the model, and focusing on those areas where appreciate is showing through, and being even more light than our first red with this second pass. Because what we want to do is just tint that orange back down to the red range. And this is going to give us that really nice primary red with some nice deep shadows, some very vibrant highlights. And I mean, it only took me maybe 10 minutes to do this one model, and that's with me working the camera, doing filming, waiting for dry times. So if you've got a whole bunch of guys that you're doing at once, this is going to go even faster. If you have a bunch of battle suits that you're working on, this is going to go even faster. So even though it looks like it might be a little time consuming having to do red, then go to orange, then go back to red, trust me, this takes like almost no time. Especially with these paints, like the Ammo by MIG paints, where we're using the airbrush thinner to thin them out. Really fast to clean out of the airbrush. You just put some airbrush cleaner in there and it cleans it right out. You don't even have to sit there messing with it. You just put some of that in there and then dump it out, and it's ready to go on to the next color. When that's pretty dry, I'm going to use this ultra matte varnish. This is the Lucky varnish from Ammo by MIG. I really like these. You've seen me use them in a few other videos. They're airbrush ready, goes on super smooth, and we're just going to matte out the surface so that you guys can see these reds a little bit better where they're not kind of shiny. The Ammo by MIG paints, when you airbrush them this way, can sometimes have a little bit of a shine to them when they're dry. And as you can see here with that matte varnish, you can see all of those colors. There's no reflection from the lights. You can see all the shadows, all the highlights. It's buttery smooth. And like I said, even with me working the camera and waiting for dry times and doing all that stuff, it took me like 10 minutes to paint the reds on this guy. It's super fast. You get this awesome look. You don't have to go through 3-4 different red colors on top of a primer coat. You just do a couple of pre-shades, put a couple of color filters over there, and you're good to go. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I'll catch you next time.